This video will contain spoilers for Undead Unluck chapter 220. Come back later when you've caught up. Okay, this is a phenomenal chapter. I fucking love this chapter. It is so good that I've had difficulty being able to put my thoughts and feelings into words to the point where, for the first time in these breakdown reviews, I've actually had to make some notes and a little mini script thing that I can use to bounce off of and get my thoughts across. That's how good this shit is. But before we get into all that stuff, let's get into the recap for this week. So the chapter starts off with a flashback over to chapter 1 to properly set in the parallels between Andy and Fuko's first meeting and then their reunion from the end of last chapter. And then we cut back to modern day as Andy fires off the Undead Unluck bullet, hitting and lodging itself inside the throne and also destroying Blood's blood clot ball as well. And after that, we have a little bit of an action sequence with Andy and Fuko both jumping ruin, with showing off some of Andy's new techniques and also the improvement that Fuko has in terms of the action compartment. And then after a small bit of dialogue between Andy and Rune, which ends up completing and getting paid off at the end of the chapter, Rune gets hit by a car and then has the parts of him that isn't the main body getting trapped in a bunch of Negator's balls, all being shown to be controlled by Shen. Then we have more Union members turn up, with Void hitting him and launching him up in the air, and then Shen and Roy using the Yoikinko staff to launch him up into space. And after a lovely little dialogue and interaction between Andy and Fuko, we end the chapter off with Andy regenerating out of the finger that lodged inside the rune at the start of the chapter. And after this lovely collage of important moments through Andy and Fuko's relationship, we end the chapter off with Andy and Ruin stood on top of a enlarged Noikinko staff about to face off. So, like I said, this was a phenomenal chapter, and it's one of them where, while yes, I have been able to analyze it writing right, the main strength of this chapter comes from the emotion of it, because this chapter is a celebration not only of the series and one of its main running themes of the series that I'll get to later, but it's also a celebration of Andy and Fuko's relationship, with them reuniting after so long, not only out of universe, with it being nearly 2 years since Ragnarok and Andy departed from the series, but also in series. As for Fuko, it was been well over 170 years, and with Andy it being 4.6 billion years. So before I get into the main thing I love about this chapter and what makes this chapter fucking phenomenal, I want to get into some of the more smaller pieces about this chapter that do help carry an elevator but aren't as big as my main love for this chapter. With one of the first things being how this chapter started off with the action, because this chapter, while not going massively deep into it, does show us that there's a massive growth in the action department with the strength of the teaming of Undead Unluck. With Andy, it shows off that he has gotten stronger. Like the Undead Unluck bullet he shot into Ruin. That thing didn't penetrate Ruin, it stayed inside of him on purpose, that's what I wanted. But it still managed to hit the blood clot ball with enough force to shatter it. And we saw the size of it last chapter. It was fucking huge. That is firepower on par with, and maybe even stronger than what Victor was showing in the Ragnarok when he was shooting all them stones that God was sending at them. But it also shows that Andy's had a massive growth in the technique department, because as we see here, he's managed to create a bunch of skin clones. So it seems to be a mixture of the Dead Shadow that he was using against Billy during the Spring Arc, and also his Dead Core Dead technique that he used against the Horde of Umas during the start of the Ragnarok arc. As it seems like he's imparting his soul into a bunch of these to help move them about and let them survive a bit longer, just to confuse Ruin. However, it also shows the strength in the actual pairing of Undead Unluck, because before, a lot of the combat was Fuko clinging onto Andy, giving him some of her point of views and some pointers and whatnot, and Andy doing all the combat. But now it's both of them, because Andy's skin cloning thing here not only was to distract Ruin, but it's also for Fuko to come in with an attack as well, as she was, as metal as it may seem, fucking hiding in one of his skin suits, turning into a bad bullet and then actually landing it on Ruin, showing that she can now be a much more active participant in their actual fights when Andy is alongside them. She's not just going to have to stand back in the sidelines anymore. She can fight alongside him, which is something she mentioned wanting to do back in the Spring arc. Next thing I want to touch on here is the Union members that Tasuku decides to use in this chapter, because they are all very specifically chosen, and it very much shows in this chapter, which I love. Because the three negators that get a bit of a limelight put on them in this chapter of Nico, Void, and Shen, they're three negators who are people that died outside of Ragnarok in the last loop, and all of their deaths involved Andy in some way. With Nico and Void being both people who Andy killed in the last loop, and then Shen being someone who died fighting alongside Andy. And then with Void, I think his inclusion ends it just being a callback over to chapter 2, because where Void came down and hit Ruin, I'm assuming it's supposed to be the same bridge where he came down and fought Andy during the previous loop, with alongside Shen, as they were the duo that was sent to handle Andy and Fuko in chapter 2. However, the thing I want to touch on is Tasuka's choice to use the two pairings here of Shen and Moi and Nico and Ichiko, as both of them pairings are very much used to show exactly what it is Andy is talking about here, which is one of the main themes of the series, of living life for the ones you love and enjoying the things that life has to offer to you. As in the previous loop, Shen and Nico were both people that needed to learn aspects of this lesson in the past loop, as Shen in the last loop was actively being stubborn in not learning the lesson of being able to live your life for the person you love. He was too blindsided by his revenge and his anger to live for Moi, which resulted in his death. And Nico being someone in the last loop who needed to learn the lesson of being able to enjoy the things that life has to offer, as Unforgettable was making him forget about his lost lover Ichiko. He wasn't able to really leave his lab or enjoy the things in life like his daughter or his friends. He was too focused on the person that he lost, which again resulted in him losing his life. And now in this loop, we've seen that both Shen and Nico have managed to learn this lesson, with Shen making reference to how he wants to grow old and live a full, long life alongside Moi, and Nico talking about how he's going to be able to enjoy life and be the happiest he's ever been out of all these loops to be with Ichiko. And the other thing that's great about involving these two is that these are two of the only confirmed relationships we have in the series, with the other one being the throuple of Rip Latler and Layla. So honestly, Tasuka's inclusion of these bunch of negators and union members is such an amazing choice, and it's such a brilliant piece of detail in his writing and shows his love for this series. And another thing, the art this chapter, the art is phenomenal every chapter, but oh my, this is a little bit of my bias coming in, because this panel of Andy and Ruin in space, I love panels. This isn't exactly it, but I love panels and pages where like characters are up in the sky and you can see the earth in the background. But I particularly love it when like they're upside down in like their orientation to it, so where it looks like the earth is in the sky and the sky is below their feet. But this page of Andy and Ruin with the earth in the background is just, it's beautiful. But the thing that carries this chapter for me, and the thing that I love, is how this chapter celebrates both Andy and Fuko as a couple, but how it also shows that their relationship and their love for each other is at its core one of the main themes of the series, with that theme being enjoying what life has to offer in spite of the cruel hardships of the road. Because Andy and Fuko, they both started out the series suffering greatly due to the hardships of the road, but neither of them wanting to live, both of them wanting to have their own lives ended. With the series started with Fuko trying to take her own life, and it also started with Andy looking for a way to take his own life. But here we see now they are both enjoying life to its fullest, and these themes taking shape. For example, if Fuko's hard work over these past 200 years taking form and being paid back to her in these union members turning up to help fight alongside her, and Andy, the way it takes form for him is Fuko, because for that 200 years that he was walking about the earth wanting to die, he had nothing. He couldn't really face his emotions. He'd lost his humanity. But thanks to the just pure happenstance and the luckiness of Andy meeting Fuko, and Fuko negating that luck and being able to turn it into fate, as he says, he's able to find a reason to live on and to enjoy life, because his negation, Undead, negates death and forces him to live. But now it's not forcing him to live, it's allowing him to live for his life, for Fuko. Honestly, this chapter is fucking beautiful. I was expecting hype. I was expecting some to just come into this chapter for pure hype, But instead, Tasuka delivered on a fucking beautiful emotional chapter, just showing that this series at its core is a romance. It's not about the action, it's not about the cool fight. They help elevate the story, but the core of the story and what makes the story a fucking masterpiece is the heart of it. The love between Andy and Fuko, the romance, and just being able to look at the cruel indifference of the universe and live on with the indomitable human spirit, and being able to enjoy what just the little things in life, not worrying about the grand scheme of everything or what some higher power has to say or do, is just enjoying what you have with you right now. And that's what makes this series fucking beautiful. Honestly, this chapter is one of the best chapters in the series because this chapter is in its core Undead Unluck. This very chapter is what the series is about, and honestly, there's nothing more I could ask for. It is a phenomenal chapter, and honestly, that's all I have to say about it. I don't have any predictions I want to make. I just want to celebrate this chapter because it's amazing, and I love it so much. I cannot wait to see what more Tasuka has to bring to the table. So, until next week, see ya.